ladies and gentlemen, Sabrina Stanley. Thank you so much for being here. I got to share with everyone, I'm super excited for a chance to pick your brain. You raced, I waddled the Silverton Alpine 50K this summer.
Yeah.
Where I think you set the course record.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, after that, I was like, man, I want to pick your brain and get you on the podcast. And then obviously, you have this, this resume that's as long as my arm. For everybody listening, at least notably 2-time Hard Rock champion, 1-time Hurt 100 champion. Like I mentioned, just course record at Silverton Alpine recently. I think you were 7th or something like that at UTMB this year.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, the resume and your accomplishments are a mile long. And so anyway, I've been trying to get in front of you since July. So I'm super excited that it's finally happening and that you're here. So thank you so much for taking the time, because I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. When you reached out, I don't know. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, so I feel like I'm kind of rusty, but I'm stoked to talk running.
We'll work our way through it together.
Yeah.
So no worries at all. I actually thought it'd be fun. Where I wanted to start, and also for everybody listening too, I failed to mention, I apologize. You're also a coach, and so I'm excited to talk to you about that a little bit too. So remind me to get there. But I was reading on your website where I want to start. I want to hear a little bit about your background, specifically your family. I believe you're from a larger family, 6 or 7 kiddos, and on your website there was mention that, I forget exactly how it was worded, but that you're basically, you all kind of talk about who's the bigger athlete. This kind of, I'm envisioning this kind of like competitive family. I was listening to your podcast with Dylan Bowman, and you were sharing a story with your brother, like working out your knee or something like that, and you described him as, I'm envisioning like a big football player type or something like that.
My brothers. Yeah.
I thought it'd be cool to kind of hear the background and the story of your family and the competitive nature of it, and kind of what got us here.
Yeah, sports were definitely emphasized more than I would say grades growing up. I mean, I had good grades, but like my dad was definitely like basketball, fast pitch, soccer, volleyball, like whatever it is. We did team sports year round. And so I'm the second oldest of 6. I have 4 little brothers that are all, like you said, bigger than me. And then I have an older sister. And yeah, it was just always like, who has the most state championships? And like in what sport? And like my dad has one, and he was a point guard in like 84 or something. And so like our whole lives, he held that over our heads. Like
the one and only.
State championship was something special. And so I'm proud to say, as an adult, I have 2 state championships, and that's the most in the family. But yeah, my brothers, they're all football players, basketball, baseball. So it was always just like growing up, the very like competitive household.
Yeah. Walk me through what that was like especially being a female in the family, household full of competitive athletes. I mean, is it fun? Is it stressful?
Yeah.
What's growing up like that like?
Well, it felt normal to me. Like I am the smallest of my family, height-wise, weight-wise, everything. I'm like the runt. And so I was the oldest in terms of my brothers, but eventually they surpassed me in like muscle. And so the only way to like, I don't know, out tough them was just to be crazier. And so I think maybe that's why I run 100 milers. Right. Like you just like have to be a little bit psycho to like, I don't know, let them know that you can like still kick their ass if you want to, even though, yeah, like they'll just throw me in a headlock any minute.
Right. Do they think that it's crazy? Like what you do, the distances that you run, where you do it, like what is?
Oh, it probably depends on which one you talk to. I think some have like no idea what I do. I mean, they know I run, but I don't think they understand the caliber in terms of like the mountains and the speed and just like the mental and physical toll it takes. I think they just think I don't know if they truly understand the difference between like being a professional 5K to like a professional 100 miler. And then one of them, Reese, the one that's closest to me in age, he's crewed me at multiple 100 milers. He even has attempted to pace me a couple times. And so I think he has like a much more expansive idea of what it's like. He helped me at Nolan's twice. And so he's very in tune with what's going on. Yeah, so it kind of just depends on like which one of them you talk to. But as you mentioned, they're kind of like have like the football stature. Like 2 of them Yeah, two of them played, I think it was D2 or D3 football, and one went and played professional in NFL in Germany.
Oh, cool.
And then one of them, I always mix it up. I think it's Portland State that has a baseball team, or University of Portland. One of them has a baseball team, and he was a pitcher for them. And so they're all like very athletic in their own way, and they still work out and hit the gym. And so they're a little bit more into like weights and stuff instead of cardio.
Right. Do they run at all?
No, the one that's closest to me, Reese, I feel like once a year he'll like get into like a running kick and like do like a few weeks of it, and then he's just like a big dude, you know. And I think it takes like a more of a toll on his body, and he has 2 toddlers too, so it's just like a juggling act to like get time to do it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I know how that is. I've got 3 kids. I was
Oh my gosh.
I'm training for Black Canyons, and on Sunday my wife had to work, and so I'm like, how am I gonna, I was sick. I told you that I had to restart. So I ended up doing these just back and forth driveway laps for
Oh my gosh.
as long as I could manage. I ended up getting 10 miles in, just going back and forth down the driveway and like knocking on the window every few times, every few minutes to make sure that the kids were still alive.
And I complain about my treadmill sometimes, and like I have no distractions. I can just sit there. I have like a dog, so I couldn't imagine doing it with kids. There's no way.
It's a lot. But what's different, or I don't know, I think one of the things I'm interested to learn from you about, because we kind of talked about like your brothers thinking you're crazy, or the family, and honestly a lot of the world thinks that people that run 100-milers are crazy in their own right. What I think is fascinating, and especially when I get to talk to people like you, I mean, gosh, when I was looking at your ultra sign up before this, and most of the races that you enter, you win. And it's so cool. And where I think things get where I'm so excited to learn from you about is the mentality and the mindset, and like what's going through your mind in those situations. Because it's one thing for a guy like me to like suffer fest through a 100-miler. I walked more than I ran, and it's a whole thing, and I'm really proud of it. But then there's like this next level that people like you bring to the table to really hard charge for that long and to dig that deep for that long. And so I'm curious that, I talked a little bit about your family and, kind of growing up that way, but I want to know from you where that mentality comes from, and the mindset side, to be able to dig that deep for that long at all of these different distances. Walk me through it.
I don't know. Like, I think the question is like, is it nature or nurture? Like, are you born with it, or is it
$1 million
how you grew up? And yeah, I would say genetically, my mom's side is like really, really hard workers, and they get after it. My grandpa was paralyzed at the age of 27 and refused to be in a wheelchair, like never had anything special on his license. He still drove. He got his pilot's license. Like, he did not let it stop him. So, and I think I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and he moved in with us, and I've never seen him have like a depressed day in his life. He was the most like spunky, positive person, and had this huge handicap. And so like, is that just like witnessing that, or is it like in your DNA? And then also, I don't know. I feel like my dad, like I said, he just drove like sports into us. Like, he was my t-ball coach, my basketball coach, and he was there like every step of the way growing up. And, you force the pitcher to hit you so you can get a base, like stuff like that. And so it's just, you can always push a little bit harder. And when I started doing ultras, the first time I contemplated doing 100 miles, I thought it was crazy. But then you see, like this many people finish Leadville 100. If that many people can do it, then surely I can finish.
I can too.
Yeah. Like, there's no way there's people out there who can do a physical feat that I can't do. And so that's kind of how it started. And then my first 100, it kind of like went up in flames. And so I was like, I made it this far. And like, I knew how bad my training was, how bad my nutrition was, my shoes, the whole gambit like could be reworked, and I can like gain 10 minutes here or whatever. And 100 miles, if you like mess up, it can cost you hours. But if you don't mess up, you can gain hours. So which is really cool to like
the flip side of that.
Figure out the puzzle of like, how does this work and how much can I improve? And so, yeah, like I did hurt twice, and the first time I think I was 3rd, but I'm like, I can go back and I can do better here. Same with Leadville. Like, I got there, I DNF'd because of time at mile 83 at May Queen. I'm like, no, I can go back, and I know if I could just tweak some little things, I can do that much better. So every time I do 100, it's just like, what can I tweak to make it faster?
Yeah, the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah,
which
definitely.
I want to come back to that. Before we do, can you talk, because that's another thing. One of the things I love about the sport of ultra running is you mature into it as like later than most sports. Like us old folks have hope, at least. Maybe it's maybe it's blind blind optimism for a guy like me. But it's like, it's a cool sport because I played college football. I mean, I was an athlete my whole life growing up. And I'm a very mediocre distance runner, but there's just enough of it that it's like, ooh, maybe today's my good day.
Yeah.
Maybe there's that thing. And so it's one of many things that has really attracted me to that sport. So what I'm curious about, though, is you had that DNF at Leadville. I forget what year that was. But
we don't need to do the math.
But before now, this
2015
stack of wins that I was referencing
10 years ago.
Yeah. And which even that right there is really cool. 10 years ago, there was your first 100-miler attempt in the DNF, and then now look where we are.
Yeah.
But there's also that you had some resolve to continue pursuing the sport, and I want to hear about that because I wonder. I really suffered through my first 100-miler, and I'm really proud of the fact that I did it.
And you finished it.
I did. The idea of another one is intriguing. I haven't signed up. Well, I tried to do Leadville. I didn't get into Leadville this year. So it's like there's one, like that's going to happen again, but I'll be honest, it's a little bit daunting because because of how challenging it was. What I'm fascinated with about your story is that you had that DNF for the first time, which a lot of people, that'd be the end of the story. Or, it would end up being a, one redemption round to get the buckle and move on or whatever. Here we have now the stack of wins that I was talking about earlier. Can you walk me through that moment and kind of like your mindset on the resolve to continue on and to keep trying, to go again and sign up for more? And because I think that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I was a 3:43 marathoner, so I knew there was something special in the cards. No, I'm being
just flying.
Yeah. No, I did Leadville, and again, I just knew I could finish it, and so I had my family fly down and friends fly down and crew and all this stuff, and then when you don't finish, I felt like, I don't know, like I'd failed immensely. And I was actually moving that next week to New York City for a job. And I lived there for 8 months. And I put in for the Leadville lottery again. And I told myself, like, if my name gets drawn, then that's fate. And I have to move back to Colorado and, like, do it right. And I will sacrifice everything to finish this race. And my name got drawn. And so I put in my 2 weeks and I moved back to Colorado. Got a job at a running store for like minimum wage or like 50 cents more or something, and reached out to a few people, Avery Collins being one, and just said, like, can you teach me how to run 100 miles? And so we grabbed a beer and I picked his brain and we started training together that summer. And from everything I'd read like, don't do 100-mile weeks, you're going to be injured. And through training with him, I started doing 100-mile weeks. I'm like, oh, you can see the results start to like happen as you're training. And so I did Leadville and he paced me, I think, like the back 40 miles. And it was just like start to finish one of my favorite races I've ever had. And I took fourth that year. And so from a DNF, from my first attempt at 100, and my first 100-mile finish was fourth at Leadville. And that was 2016. And even then I was like, okay, like this is just from one summer. If I can like stack up a few summers like this, and again, keep tweaking the nutrition, keep tweaking the gear and my aid station times, and just keep working the puzzle and finessing it, like I can continue to get better. And yeah, again, I just love that about 100 miles, that like huge gains can be made by small tweaks.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that. Before we do, can you tell me, going into these, I mean, obviously I know now you're always competitive, you're racing. Those early on, like that Leadville, for example, where you got fourth, the second time back. Are you going into that trying to win, like racing? Or were you going into it thinking, I want to try to finish? Like what At that moment, that kind of chapter of your life, what was the goal? What was the mindset? What was kind of like what would have been determined successful at that point?
I mean, it sounds silly now, but I remember going into that race, I told Avery, and I was so embarrassed to tell him my dreams. And I said, I think I can go top 10 female at Leadville. And he's like, no, I know you can. And I'm like, oh, let's see then. And so top 10, Leadville isn't typically a huge female deep field. So top 10, I might even be 28 hours or something. Cutoff is 30. So I don't know. I thought that was a crazy dream. And so when you're in the race and you realize oh, I'm top 7, top 6. And I feel I ran that pretty conservatively the first half. Then the back half is when I started checking off girls. And yeah, you're also comparing it. So it's just 1 year later. And I knew, I don't know what time I came into fish hatchery, or outward bound, but the sun was down. It was 2 a.m. It was freezing. And then the next year I come through and the sun is setting. And that gives you such an adrenaline boost. You can compare to the previous year, how miserable you were. And now you're on this high and you're feeling great. And you remember being at your lowest point the year before in different locations along the race course. And so it was just the same with UTMB this year. It's I love to run races back to back because you can literally have a side-by-side comparison of your improvement.
Yeah. So a couple of things that too, I don't want to forget. I remind me the puzzle of the 100-miler.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, but there's two other, I think, notable moments in that story. The first one is Avery's belief. The support, somebody saying, "I know you can."
Yeah.
I want to hear what that felt like, and how did that change your confidence level or your perspectives to have somebody else truly believe in you when they're. At the time, there wasn't the stack of evidence that I keep referencing.
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, Avery was a huge piece of that puzzle. And then his knowledge, he had ran, I think, at least one 200-miler before that. And he had won a bunch of races too. So to have somebody who I felt knew the sport inside and out and saw that in me, I was stoked on it. Then again, I was working at this running store. It's no longer there, but it was Vertical Runner in Breckenridge. And my boss, Dean, anybody who came into the store, he'd be like, this is Sabrina Stanley and she's going to win Leadville this year. And again, I had finished 150-miler, I think, maybe 2. And anybody who came in, he didn't care who they were, how.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah. And
I love that.
Some decent names in the sport came in and he would just say, this is Sabrina Stanley, she's going to win Leadville. I was like, Dean, you got to stop telling people that. But he didn't care. He has crewed me at multiple races as well and just knew and felt it. And so to have him there as well, it's just my entire circle, Reese, my brother, Avery, Dean, I would say those 3 guys all along this journey have just had as much belief as me, if not more.
Yeah. And I've got to imagine that it adds so much fuel to the fire. I can't imagine what a world, how cool and how unique it is to have that deep of a support system that early on.
Well, and you want to win for yourself, but you also want them to be happy as well. You want your team to be on, everybody wants to support or cheer for the team that wins. And so it's helpful whenever I'm at a low. If I come into an aid station, I pretend I'm on this huge high because I feed off their energy. And if they see I'm on a high, then they get excited and they feed. And even if I'm I don't know, an hour late on my projected times, I'm no, I'm holding back. You
good.
wait.
Right.
Yeah, I'm intentionally doing this and I'm about to turn it on. And so just playing those mind games with yourself and with your crew to feed off their energy, I think is super helpful.
Oh, and wildly powerful. It's crazy,
yeah.
Because I've seen those things work outside of running too. Whether it's business or taking an adventure or a risk or whatever, it's it's weird. I almost think that our mindsets genuinely can influence,
without a doubt,
the reality.
Well, I mean, going back to football, if you're losing at halftime and your team's all down, you're probably not going to make a huge comeback. But if you can get everybody jacked and stoked, you can come back and go on a run. And so yeah, and that's a whole team you have to get together. In ultra running, you just have to trick yourself,
right.
Which sometimes is harder.
Yeah.
But if you believe it, you can achieve it.
Less to overcome, but probably harder to achieve for sure. I saw recently. I'm going to totally butcher it, but I was working on a presentation about the power of our minds.
Yeah.
And there was a stat in there that was basically like for athletes, visualizing the thing is almost as impactful as doing the thing. Like training, physically training, but also thinking about like having a good race and feeling good and running strong. And, like I did it all the time in football. I was better at it. I had more practice than I do in running now, but I would visualize making the big play or, showing up when things were on the line or whatever. And through that study, and again, I don't have the exact like stats with me, but they found that it was some level equal of effectiveness as actually practicing.
Well, and I think even in ultra running, like visualizing what could go wrong and then mentally working through it. So when you get into a race and you have the worst blisters on your feet you've ever had, like you've already gone through that in your head, and now hopefully you've planned and said, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take to address those blisters. Or I'm throwing up and I didn't think I was going to throw up, but I've already thought if I throw up for 10 miles, this is what I'm going to do to fix this. And so to know like all the pitfalls and then have the solutions already lined out in your head. So there's no surprise. There's no like poor me. Just like, okay, now I'm going to go through these steps and figure it out.
It's almost like you've mentally already been there.
Yeah.
Is that something, do you actively work on? I mean, I know we talked about, 100-mile weeks and training. I mean, and all the, obviously, there's so much physical training that has gone on.
Right.
Are you intentional about training your mind, or is it something that you've just learned? I mean, maybe the mind gets trained while the body gets trained.
For sure. But I think there's different headspaces that you like do a training block in. And it's a journey. It's a journey. But like,
that's for another podcast.
Yeah. Going into, let's say, Hard Rock 2021, like I was in this super fine-tuned, like I'm going to win this race no matter what. Like no matter what, I don't care how much pain I'm going to be in. I'm going to win this race, to the point that if I don't win, like somebody should probably be with me that next night. Like it's a dangerous headspace to be in, to put that much stock in yourself and what you think you're capable of, to the point where there's no option outside of that.
No alternative. And especially in a world with 1,000 variables.
Yeah, exactly. But that's how I think you have to be in that mindset to win those competitive races against those other competitive women. And then I had a race that didn't go so hot, and I hadn't prepared for what would happen if it didn't go well. And so I think every 100 after that, I kind of put up these barriers. Like, I'm just going to go for top 5, like UTMB or whatever. It's such a high-risk game to say I'm going to win UTMB and there's nothing else, because the odds of that happening are so slim. And I think I'm finally back there this year, which I'm really excited about.
So excited.
Yeah.
So exciting. Well, and another just kind of like, I don't know, curiosity of mine on the mindset tricks of yours. And I don't know if you do this at every race, but for sure at UTMB last year, there was an anecdote that you had mentioned afterwards that one of the rules of the crew was to not tell you what place you're in.
Yeah.
Do you do that at every race, and even if you do or not? But why? Why would you not want to know what place?
Yeah. No, that's not every race. That was a special thing for UTMB. So, the previous year I ran it, and I went in super injured and knew that. And so the previous year I was just looking to finish. I mean, top 10 obviously was a goal, but the year before I'd got COVID the week of the race and couldn't run. And so I was just happy to make to the start line. And then that was like goal 1. Goal 2 was to complete the 100 miles. Goal 3 was like to do top 10. And so there was these steps along the way, and I accomplished them to the best I could that year. And then I had surgery. And so this year when I went back, I was like, I don't want to, I think just by having surgery, I can cut off a ton of time. I had surgery January 5th of 2024. And so I kind of like rushed my recovery, and I just wanted to race UTMB. And I didn't get like the full training block that I normally would have. And even like the mental headspace was different. So I didn't want to go in and be like thinking, oh, I don't know, I'm in like 5th place, like bummer at UTMB. I didn't want like any of that in my head. Or maybe I'm in 5th place and I don't want to be scared that like sixth place is breathing down my neck. So I just said, I'm going to run the best I can the whole race. And that's all that matters. Like I can't do anything beyond that. And so it doesn't matter where I'm at in the field. Yeah. So I would run into aid stations with my headphones in. And then as soon as I saw my crew, I would take them out, and they knew not to say anything. But I was so scared that I'd be running in and somebody would say, like, congratulations, you're in like 8th place or whatever I was in at the time.
Right.
And then Adidas had a camera crew out there. And like when I saw them, I'd be like, I would yell before they approached me, I would like put like my hands over my ears and be like, don't tell me what place I'm in. And then I'd take out my headphones and like they would run and film me. And so, yeah, I just like tried my best to run as blind as I could, which at UTMB is really hard because there's so many fans out there. Yeah. And I don't know how, but literally not a single person on the entire course told me what place I was in until the finish line. I finished, and there's like video footage, and Avery was waiting there, and I said, what place am I in? Right. And I literally, like, obviously I knew I wasn't winning. And I knew like my time and like what roughly that would put me in. But I knew I passed 2 girls in the last section. I had no idea if I'd like just moved into top 10 or top 3, or like it was all a surprise.
So when you, knowing that, kind of like running with the blinders on, just to simply put it, but then you finish. Did knowing what place you were in change the way you felt about the outcome? And if so, how?
No and yes. I was happy with 7th. I was shocked to find out that before that last section, I was in 9th. I just felt, I was an hour 45 up on my previous time, and I was still in 9th, which like surprised me. So I guess I wouldn't have to compare my last section to the previous year and how much time I gained there. But I did think I was going to be a little bit further up in the field. But it was the fastest women's field that race has ever seen. So I'm happy with 7th, but like I definitely want to go back and improve upon that.
So if you go back, would you run with blinders on again, or do you think that knowing where you are helps to kind of fuel the competitive fire?
I kind of like running with blinders on.
Interesting.
It takes a level of stress out of it, and like, I don't even know if that's possible again. Like, it's shocking to me that not a single person along the route, because I think the last like 20 miles I didn't even run with headphones in.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would like to, but I don't know if that'll actually happen.
Yeah, I just think it's such an interesting approach for somebody like you that's as competitive as you are. I could see that. I could see it being incredibly powerful, or I could see it being.
But I'd rather just
scary.
Focus on the time, and I think just based on looking at previous times, like I want to shoot for this goal time, and it doesn't matter where anybody else is in the field, because if they're running, like they're going to have their own blow-ups along the way, they're going to have their own lows and highs, and so just because whatever person has like the best 50K of their life starting out, I don't want the pressure that I have to run at that 50K pace.
Right.
Because who knows, she could have the worst 50K after her first 50. Great. You know what I mean? Like
right.
There's so many variables that I don't want to race however they're racing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mentioned there's two things I was fascinated with that story. First one was kind of that external belief in the support system that you had, which I think is just, it's cool. What a great, powerful reminder about how impactful our minds can be, and like, people having us believe in things like that. But the second one was, I forgot to unpack this, so I apologize, but I want to go back to it. You quit your job and you moved across the country.
Yeah.
After 100-mile DNF.
Yes. Yeah.
That is crazy. And I want to know, you want to talk about going all in.
Yeah.
If there was ever like a microcosm moment for somebody who went all in and, made it happen, walk me through that, the mindset behind it, the decision process, because I think that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
Yeah. Well, I told myself if I don't get picked for the Leadville lottery, then I'm going to double down and I'm going to like chase this career and like see where it goes and climb this ladder as high as I can. Or, I'm going to get this job at a running store and again, go all in. And yeah, but like the goal wasn't even to like be a competitive runner. I literally did that all just to finish Leadville. Like I didn't even care if I was the last finisher.
See,
I just
crazy.
Wanted to finish 100 miles and say I did that. And when I think I was 24. No, I was younger than that. It was 22. I was working in Alaska and I read The Lore of Running. And I think when I first found out about 100-mile racing, and I read about Leadville and Ann Trayson, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Because I was a marathon runner, like very middle of the pack at the time. And I said, by the time I'm 45, I was 22. By the time I'm 45, my goal is just to finish 100
run
miles.
100 miler.
Yeah. And then I thought it would take me a decade or more to get into Leadville. I didn't really understand how the lottery worked. And so I just put my name in and figured I'd start like building tickets or whatever. And the very first year I put my name into Leadville, I got drawn. So I was 25 when I first attempted. So
and
just
then at
3
26,
I finished.
quit and moved.
Yeah.
Moved across the country.
And then moved back.
Has that always been your nature? I mean, have you always been kind of a
Wanderlust?
go all in? Yeah. Or do you think
yeah.
that was specific for running? Was there something drawing you towards?
I don't think. I mean, I've always been a competitive person, but I've never gone all in that deep. Like, I will sacrifice everything to do this. That I think was the first time, and then I started seeing results, and I'm like, oh.
Now and then
I can really, really go. Like, I can go even more all in.
Do you think that was because there was unfinished business, like because of the,
for sure,
the late stage DNF that was? I mean, it's like so close you could taste it,
Yeah.
Or I don't know, or were you obsessed? I mean, what was the?
Yeah.
What was your world like to make you, quit and move across the country?
Well, I just wanted to be successful at whatever it was, whether it was my job or running.
At anything.
Yeah, and I think it's a blessing in disguise. I've said this a lot that I did DNF because if I had finished, even if I had finished at 29:58 or whatever, I would have said that's what I'm capable of. I finished 100 miles and that's what I can do. And these people who run it super fast are incredible, and I can't believe that they do it like that. But because I DNF'd, when I came back, I really hyper focused on my training and nutrition and all these other things, and got to the level I got to because that I wouldn't have even thought I was capable of if I hadn't DNF'd.
Yeah, what an interesting perspective. There's it's called the slingshot theory.
Yeah.
But it's basically that in life, sometimes our situations aren't quite bad enough to make a change.
Yeah, exactly.
The job's not quite bad enough to quit.
Yep.
Relationship's not quite bad enough to leave, or
Totally.
And sometimes we need to take a step back to launch ourselves.
Taking a step back is hard
forward.
sometimes. Yeah.
Brutally difficult. And so it's interesting that you kind of have that benefit of hindsight to see, it took the failure or the bad outcome that then at least contributed to propelling you forward.
Yeah, no, because when I DNF'd that day, I thought, my soul was crushed. I could not believe that I wasn't tough enough to run 100 miles in under 30 hours. And all these other people are, and you go to these races and these people are incredible. And when people ask how they get into running, it's just go to these races and you'll see there's no body type. There's no perfect age or whatever. You'll see 70-year-olds out there crushing it. You'll see people who are there's no way they can run 100 miles, and then they'll kick your ass. And so it's just, I couldn't believe that I didn't have the stamina or the strength to do that. And I'm fuck that. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make it happen no matter what.
Right.
I'm not going to let this body tell me what this mind is capable of.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's a mind game? That was an interesting statement. Not let this body tell this mind what it's capable of.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, again, believing that getting in these different headspaces, the last 2 years, I had decent UTMBs, but it's nowhere near what I'm capable of, I don't think. And I think, it's a really hard place to get in to, believe that you're capable of something, because if you truly believe you're capable of it and then it doesn't happen, you can only look at yourself.
Right.
Because if you really are capable of it, you should have made it happen. And then it's that much harder to go back a year later or however many years later it takes you to make that happen. But it might be even harder to believe that you're not capable of that. I'd rather believe that I can win UTMB one day and keep trying every single year, keep showing up, and working on my shit than to like truly believe that like I'm not the person to win. Yeah, I'm not the person to win UTMB. Like I don't.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I think way beyond running. Like maybe it's foolish, but I have a crazy belief in myself too.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's business or raising my family or running or whatever. You know, I'm like, sometimes that can make for a challenge, you know, because then when you don't win, you're like, I was supposed to win, you know? And so sometimes for me, at least in my life, I'm like, wish sometimes that I was a little bit more excited with whatever the outcome, whether it was a race or a business venture or you know, whatever it might be. But if there weren't that belief, I don't think that I would have gotten that far anyway. So it's like I would definitely take the trade.
Well, and like I guess there's like a healthy balance if you want that in your life of like accepting, like being happy with 7th place at UTMB,
right? Because
like it would suck to not be happy with that, but also I think to really pass into the other side, you have to know that there's stuff left on the table.
Yeah. So when I ran my first ever ultra was a 24-hour format loop race. And now in hindsight, it's comical how, you know, just clueless I was.
Yeah.
I started it in road shoes. I finished it in like,
we've all been there.
I mean, you know, like comical.
Brooks Ghost, Leadville. Yeah.
I started mine in those carbon Nikes. Gosh dang it, what are they called?
The Vaporfly?
Okay. And anyway, whole thing. But but I was like, I'm gonna run 100 miles.
Yeah.
In 24 hours, I'm gonna do this dang thing. I had never
Goggins who?
Yeah, my God, let's go. I had never ran more than a marathon. And I ran a marathon 2 weeks before, and I was doing I did a little bit of training with some back-to-back long runs, but not
did you have a coach or anything, or you just
why
would you
full and started running laps around this lake, and I made it 60 something, you know, just shy of 70 miles, and I had so much left in the tank. But at the time I thought I was all the way done.
For sure.
You know, I called my wife, she came and picked me up after running for 16 hours or whatever. But so that's like that fine line of, I had this crazy zero evidence-based belief that I could go do it, just crazy enough to then go try. Then I got to almost 70 miles, and I was like, actually I could, if I could figure, you know, if I could put the pieces to the puzzle together a little bit and learn a little bit more. Yeah. And so then I just got obsessed with the 100 mile distance. And I wouldn't stop thinking about it. So I was looking at races, you know, all afterwards, and I ended up signing up for the Buffalo Run 100. And that was the next one that I ran. But it was a fun experience for me, because cluelessly believing that I could also taught me that I could, even though I failed.
Right.
And then you're like obsessed with it. Like, now I have to go do it because I know it's possible.
Yeah.
Like I know that I can make this thing happen one way or another.
When you did your first 24-hour event and you got home after that and you were like, do you beat yourself up? Like, oh, if I just stayed out there, if I had just done this, like, or were you like, no, that was a good day?
I was pumped on my effort.
Yeah.
But I knew, like, I was excited with how far I went, but I also, there was part of me that knew that
if I could do it again. Yeah.
That, like, so then I went back this year thinking I'm going to win. This time totally different. And then of course I was injured and didn't even come close. But it's that's an interesting thing to think about, like that dilemma of that intense self-belief, maybe blindly, you know, early on, but enough to get us started.
But it's easy to sit here and talk like, oh, if you just have this belief, you can make it happen. And then when you're 80 miles deep and you're in the worst pain in your life and you've been throwing up and things are coming out both ends and you're just like, this is the worst day ever. Like, I've gone through it and I've given it my all. And then like the hour or two after you get home or longer and you're like, I had more.
There was more.
That's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too, you mentioned about kind of one of the unique things about ultra running is there's no like body type for it. There's no age, you know, it's so different, which I think is really inspiring.
Totally.
And I was talking about it earlier on. Like, that's one of my favorite things about the sport is that
Yeah.
we all have hope. You know, like we all think that, you know, maybe today's the day that I have that great day.
Yeah.
But it's also like there's all these different races happening within the race.
For sure.
You know, that all the individual battles and challenges and whatever. You're talking a little bit about like how do people get into running? You know, go and watch it. Tell me more about like what that's like from you know, I'm a mid-packer through and through, but you know, somebody from your seat, do you get to experience those cool things about ultras that that us slow guys get to, or is it a different?
No. So I'm so thankful for my very first Leadville experience because I was back 10% of the pack coming into Fish Hatch, 2 a.m. or whatever it is. That might be the cutoff, but I was like, I think barely above the cutoff of Fish Hatch, and it's just a zombie death march. And there's something really special about seeing that suffering in the human body. And then I do coach some athletes, and I've paced some of them, and I've crewed some of them, and I pace all calibers of athletes. And so they're not like winning these races. They're in there just to finish and to beat their personal best or to do these distances. Then I've also crewed Tour, which Tour is it's a 200 miler that starts and it finishes in Courmayeur. And you go, I think, as more vert per mile than Hard Rock, and I think it's like vert per mile is like the same as Nolan's, and so it's incredible. But the human suffering I've seen at Tour, I've never cried at any of my races, at any of my finishes or failures, whatever. But watching Avery finish Tour and like knowing the suffering he went through for 4 or 5 days or whatever, he was 11th finisher, but he was out there a long time, and just seeing that amount of suffering, it brings tears to your eyes. It's so, I don't know why, like, I'm so enthralled by human suffering, like what you can like force your body to go through with like lack of sleep and speed and the terrain. I think it's really cool that like we can do that to ourselves and that people are out there doing that.
It's the coolest thing in the whole world.
Yeah, it is really neat.
What do you think it is about it? Like why, and especially, you know, like that example of Tour, you know, the rational mind is like, stop, you know, like especially people that we love. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, but there's something about in the ultra world or the environment where it's inspiring and you're encouraging it, even though it's so immensely painful and challenging. It's something, I don't know. What do you think it is about that?
To me, I mean, it's a bunch of different things, but like the first one that comes to mind is like, what is this body capable of? Like, what are our bodies capable of? And I think if we stop at the marathon, I mean, that's just like, we'll say 4 hours for the average person. But if you fuel yourself right and you pace yourself right, like, you could literally run across the country. Yeah. That's crazy. That's like crazy. On your own 2 feet, you can cross the entire country or whatever, you know, wherever you're at. I think that's really neat that like with your own will, you can make anything happen. And like, I think that like level of fitness is like, how fit can you be? And like, there's different kinds of fitness, like strength and whatnot, but just pure endurance, mental and physical. Like, what does the peak of that look like? Yeah. And can you do that to your own body? Right. And that's where I saw a thing the other day. You mentioned like the average marathon. I saw a quote online the other day that I just loved, but it was like, what time do average people finish marathons? And then it says average people don't run marathons. Yeah. You know, like it's a nod to just being out there trying it. But yeah, and that the endurance of the human spirit, I think even, you know, you mentioned kind of like fitness and the mind and the body and things like that. I'm curious from your perspective, especially, and for everybody listening, like I really do mean a difference between what you do and what I do. Like I'm surviving, you're racing, and of course we're all racing. And like I said, I do think that there's like, we all have those hopes to someday, you know, have a good race. But I bring that up just to say that like there's different experiences going on. And I'm curious from your perspective, especially from a competitive, the competitive side of this world, as it relates to fitness. And I know you coach and all of that, so I can't wait to get your insight on this.
can you get enough physical fitness, to run these 100-milers, or at what point does the mind come into play, and like, I don't know, the ratios or that balancing act of like the physical fitness versus the mental fortitude?
I think in most races, you can carry yourself physically as long as you know, like as long as you believe that you're capable of it, you can carry yourself physically. But I think when you get to these ultra competitive races, you have to have the mind aspect.
Yeah.
Like you can finish, as long as you believe you can finish, you can finish. I believe that with any level of fitness, but fitness can carry you a long way. When you get to an ultra competitive race, you have to have like both of them so dialed.
Yeah.
I'll go back on that. I'll say like any race, if it's 90 fitness, 10 mental, or even flip that, like you can make it happen as long as one is in place.
Okay, right.
But I think to do the ultra competitive events, you have to have like both of them so dialed.
Yeah. That's a great answer. That you'd have to have those good days.
Yeah,
you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that's why this world fascinates so many of us.
Yeah,
it's because the elites, the competitive class of it, you definitely have to have a strong mind and a strong body, which is I think unique to this sport. At least especially unique to this sport. I mean, every sport you have to have the mental component to it, but there's so many sports where athleticism can just win.
Oh yeah.
So I wonder if that's why we're so fascinated with with people like you in this world that can find that balance of the mind and the body, bring them together, and then.
But I would argue that sometimes what I'm doing is easier than what like a mid-packer is doing. Because again, like I've been in the back of the pack, like I know how horrendous that feels. Like in the dark of the night, when you've been out there, like the finishers have finished 10, 15 hours ago, and you're still out there, and you've been out there since 4 a.m. the day before, or 36 hours earlier. And now like the winters came through and it was sunshine, and now it's like 10 below, or it's snowing, or, like or it's like 90 degrees and you're out in the sun.
You're still out there.
A whole nother day. And like that's a different level of like managing your nutrition and managing like.
That's a good point.
You're just exposed so much longer, which is gonna like double down and make you even slower because you're that much more exhausted.
Right.
And so
the mind has to stay with you that long.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Yeah,
It's a good point.
Paced Cocodona twice, and just seeing those runners out there and like how they manage and push through and just like day after day after day, like it's crazy. Like. What you're capable of if you just keep moving.
Do you think that we've come even close to like seeing the human limit?
No. I mean, I think we're still figuring out nutrition. We're still figuring out gear.
I mean, just think about how recent even electrolytes are.
Right.
Really.
Totally. Yeah. No, and I think even like women in the sport, like the gains that we're making in terms of speed alone, in like these longer distances, like we're 100 miles, like sure, like we've made some huge gains, but then we go to like 200 milers, and then after 200 milers, like I think there'll be a day when there'll be like legit races across country, and like those days will be shed off. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think we're just gonna keep going, but I also think there's fads because what was it, like the 60s? I think like everybody was really big into like cross country races and these like 6-day events or 30-day events, and then like it kind of like fades, and so I think we are in like this surge right now of like ultra running and trail running. And maybe it'll die down, or I don't know, maybe it'll keep growing.
Is the sport's got to be growing.
Oh,
right?
I think hugely, yeah.
Sometimes I wonder, now that we live in the digital world, I'm like, I don't know if my sphere is evolving or if the world is evolving. You know what I mean? Like if it's
I think all like niche sports are like fly fishing. I think is like seeing this huge boom. I mean, I think all like little. I don't know, like little pockets of interests are growing because they just have so much more exposure because of social media.
Right. Yeah. Well, and we get to, especially in the ultra world, it's like you had mentioned, seeing all these people that finish and you're like, well, I can too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's, it's inspiring, and it's also just information. You start to realize what people are capable of and start to wonder, I wonder if I could do that.
And maybe it's my bubble, but I do feel like exposure at a younger age helps as well, because I didn't even know about I thought I invented trail running. Like, I know that's an ego talking.
I invented the selfie, just so you know.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I'm going to take
let
that
Brittany
to my
know.
grave. Yeah, I invented the selfie. I have a selfie.
But yeah, I mean, I was on vacation with a girlfriend of mine. We just like went on this backpacking trip to New Zealand. And every morning I would wake up before like our day's like itinerary, and I would go run trails because I just New Zealand has a bunch of amazing trails, and I was a road runner, and so I would just go run trails, and I didn't know anybody else in the world was doing that. I knew people hiked trails, but I was running them before anyone else.
Right, the first one, yeah.
Yeah, and then I moved to Colorado, and again, I was a road runner, and there's like one highway in and out of town. I grew up with a bunch of country roads, so I was always running roads. There's no country roads in Breckenridge, and so I started running trails there. And I really thought I invented trail running, and it was like my own hidden world. And then I start working at this, well, that was later, but like I start getting exposed to more and more people, and I'm like, oh, like I thought people trained on roads for Leadville, which I know people do, but I didn't realize there's this whole industry around it.
Did you like go trail running?
In like 2000, from like 2010 to 2015 that like I like was getting slowly exposed to this. But like during that time period, I really thought nobody else was doing this like crazy thing I was doing.
It's so funny. Yeah. And now, gosh, with social media. I mean, yeah. It's
everywhere. So what I was going to say, is that like I didn't even discover this sport until I was like in my mid-20s. I have a niece, or it's my cousin's daughter, whatever that makes her to me, second cousin maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah. And she's like, I should know her exact age, like 6 or 7. And she knows all about trail running, and she like follows my races, and she's done like a handful of 5Ks, and she's out there crushing it as like this little girl. And I think it's so neat that all these young women are going to grow up with this sport already like in their heads and know that that's an option. Nobody I went to school with, and I went to school with a bunch of phenomenal athletes that like went and played like D1 fast pitch and like just crazy athletes, and like they didn't even know this was like a venue that they could like entertain.
Isn't it the coolest thing? So it's like, we'll just call her your niece because I have no idea. But similarly, like with my kids, it's been the coolest thing. So one of the things we do is I finish every race with my kids.
That's awesome.
Like it's just it's non-negotiable. I get to the finish line.
Right.
And, I'm holding hands with my kids, and we're running across the finish line together, or walking. But because I want them to know that they can do anything. Like, I want them to know that they are capable of literally anything.
Right.
They can do remarkable things. They can do enormous things. Like the world is their oyster, and they can just go do it. And it's the coolest thing to be able to like show them that. It's been really fun and rewarding for me to use that as examples with parenting or teaching of like, hey, no, we can do anything. Yeah. Like we 100 miles is just the start. I mean, you can do anything you want in life, in fitness, and
I buy into that.
Athleticism, or whatever. And so I'm curious because you had mentioned kind of like your niece, and that kind of younger generation, and especially I think in the female side of this world, which is progressing, very quickly, and there's just all these cool things that are happening right now in the women's side of things. I want to know what that feels like to know that you're kind of in a spotlight and an example, and knowing that there's all these little girls seeing what you're accomplishing and seeing what you're getting done.
Oh, I don't even know how to answer that. I like they're inspiring me. I feel like I went home for Christmas, and she just wanted to run with me. My cousin's like, because he's an ultra runner, and he's like, do you mind if and I was running with him. He's like, do you mind if we set this up and we just go for like this loop around this pond? I'm like, yeah, anytime. Like as far as she wants to go, I'm there. And anytime I'm home, like I just think that it's so awesome I don't know, like I don't have kids myself. And so when I'm around young women, like I think that's so exciting that they're passionate about being active, and like, I don't know, it just, I guess I'm inspiring them, but again, like I find so much inspiration from them. And then like running UTMB, and you see them out there with their signs, and they want to like slap your hand, and they know who you are. It is so cool that like they're that involved. And again, to go back, like I didn't find out about it just so much later in life. And like, I think the pool of women who could also say that is probably like most of the elite runners out there.
Yeah.
And so now like, I don't know, say they're just the pool of young women who are finding out about it at a young age. And so like all that talent, like before we're grabbing talent from this tiny little pond. And in 20 years, I think when all these women grow up and like if they choose to go down that path, just like the level of talent and the expanse that like it's coming from, you know, it's like right now we're like at community college level. And like, I think we're going to have like this huge, like, I don't know, to stay with that metaphor, like D1 level runners coming in that, because like I was never going to be a D1 athlete and I'm successful at this sport. So like what happens when like a real D1 athlete comes in and like focuses all her attention on this sport? And I think we have like some examples of that in the sport, but if we have like 50 examples of that, like, the sport is definitely, it's like, I think these young women are going to do something special. Like, and again, the sport's growing and I'm excited to see where it's at when I'm like long retired.
Sit on a beach somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever retire? Do you think that ultra running is ingrained in you? Or, I mean, do you think it's something that you kind of see yourself doing forever or I don't know. Like, is it a lifestyle thing? Is it a job?
I don't think I can ever step away. So I think that when I do step away, it'll be like forced and really sad. Yeah. Like I don't
kicking and screaming.
Like I think there's some like athletes who step away at the right time and like you don't watch them decline and you're like, oh, they
end
knew.
At the peak, they win the Super Bowl. They retire.
Yeah. No, I think like I'll be crawling across the finish line and be pissed that I didn't win. No, I would like to stay competitive for like 10 more years is my goal. I'd like to like make it to 45 and be really competitive until that time. And then I tell myself that like, then I'll switch to like be really competitive at 200s. But who knows, like the way the sport's going, like 200s are getting even competitive now. And then I was like, after 200s, then I'm going to like go for like cross country stuff and like AT and the Pacific Crest Trail and do these like crazy long adventures. But I don't know. Like I'm like, oh, there's always like the next step that I can be competitive at. Right. But like maybe I'll go for like the 80-year-old like fastest marathon or something. Like I think I'm always gonna like have goals that I want to go after as long as my body will allow me to, and like hopefully I can keep like my strength training and yoga and like all the extra stuff that like keeps you healthy.
Right.
Because I don't know, it's a really hard sport on your body.
Yeah.
Even like now, I feel like I'm like, oh, like you feel it after 100 miles. I'm like, does it always feel like this, or is this one extra hard?
I was telling my buddy the other day, I am desperate. I'm gonna run another this year. I'm like 100 miles because I want to know what it's like to like be alive after.
Yeah,
I
don't know if that's a thing.
Oh my goodness! But, like people like hang out and do pictures at the. I mean, I was all the way done. They carried me to the car. I mean, I want to at least finish a 100-miler and like stay awake. At least like experience afterwards for a little bit at least.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that's a pipe.
I feel like I want that dream too.
Being afterwards, yeah. That's good to know that. Yeah, and I'm not the only one that's just like.
I think everybody does.
Done. Yeah.
Maybe not, because like I remember going to the award. I not to keep bringing up UTMB, but I remember going to the awards ceremony and I'm just like shook, like I'm done. Right. And I'm so swollen.
I guess you have to still function because there's more stuff going on.
But I just feel swollen and like a zombie and like what am I doing here? And then I look over at Ruth Croft and she looks like she hasn't even raced.
She's hanging out.
Yeah, she's not swollen at all, and she's like alert and smart.
She thought that about you.
Well, I said, do you feel this at all? Like, did you go home after the race and just like die? Because I died, and I think she maybe not, but like to me, she just like looked at me like, "What are you talking about?"
You know how like you never know what other people. Well, I mean, right. Like, for life, like you never know what other people are going through.
Yeah.
I wonder if to us everybody looks like they have it together afterwards, but to them. We're all.
No, I feel like I'm a wreck after. Like I just did this race in Australia, and Abby Hall ran and won the 100K, and we flew home together. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, you're not like even if I'm not racing, I swell so bad on flights.
Yeah.
And so I
can't imagine flying.
Literally, I'm not. I think just like the combination of racing and then flying home from Australia. It was just a really bad combination for me. And I'm not kidding you. I think I gained like 15 to 20 pounds in water weight.
I believe it.
My sweats were so tight. And I'm sitting next to Abby Hall and I'm like, you're not swollen at all. going on with you? Because I was a wreck. I was a wreck, and she was just chilling.
It's so funny. That's so funny. Well, I'm glad to know that that at least you feel the same. So I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was done, I joke with everybody. I was like, your feet hurt when your eyes are swollen.
Yeah.
I was all the way done.
Totally.
But talking about goals, and I want to talk about a little more outside of your running life. You made a post recently about some of your 2025 goals you put out there.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be fun to talk about them and why they're important to you for the year.
Okay, you might have to remind me.
I got them written down. So one of them is that you want to read for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I love reading, and it brings a lot of joy to my life, and it allows me to separate myself from because as much as I love running, it is work to me. It's my job. And so if it's your passion, hobby, and your job, there's no time away from it. And it's kind of like being self-employed. There's no weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm training 6-7 days a week. Even if I'm not running that day, I'm hitting the sauna, I'm hitting the gym, I'm doing my yoga, whatever it is. And so I've noticed when I step away from reading, I feel like I get more anxiety and stressed out and just I just don't like it. So if I can read a half hour a day, even if it's a book I don't like, just to put my mind somewhere else, I really enjoy, since I was little, just grabbing a book and going into that world.
Yeah. Are you reading novels or what?
Yeah, everything. Right now I'm reading, I'm going to butcher the title. I think it's The Women Who Run with Wolves or something to that extent. And it's just a bunch of old indigenous stories of women. And some of them are fairy tale-esque, but it's from all over the world. And then the author, I think she's a professor at Colorado University or something, or was. But and then the story will be 5 to 7 pages, and then she'll spend 30 pages really breaking down,
unpacking it.
Yeah,
oh, that sounds awesome.
It's super in depth, and I think I have a good vocabulary, and because I'm a huge reader, and even reading this, I feel at least once a day I'm looking up words. I'm I have no idea what this means.
Right.
So it's pretty. It can be dry at times, and it's really in depth. And I actually finished it this morning, and I want to read her notes in the back of the book. But I'm really happy to be done with it.
One of those. It was some more
push. Yeah.
The other one you had was to reach out to a friend or family 5 days a week.
Yeah. Again, running is especially ultra running, I think is such an isolating venture. And so I've noticed I can get into these patterns where I don't talk to anybody for days, maybe outside of Avery. And so again, just get my feet back into the real world and touch base with my family, or I've let some friendships slide. So it's make sure that the friendships I have, I am investing into at least a little bit, from time to time, maybe not chatting on the phone for hours every day, but just hey, how are you doing? I haven't heard from you for a while, or congratulations on, your job, your kids, whatever, just let them know I'm still alive, and checking to make sure that they're still alive.
Right. I love that, because it's something all of us, or no one does enough of it. And it's totally, there's so many people that we care about and we don't tell them enough.
Well, and I've gone through some changes, I would say, in the last few months of my life, and the amount of friends who have reached out to me, and I've gotten closer with so much of them, that I've been friends with them for the last 5 years, and then in these last 3 months, I feel our friendships have grown so much more, just because we've just been checking in, and it's been really nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then the last one, start a Roth IRA.
I know, that's the hard one. I just feel I need to be an adult. I have no I have no future planning besides hopefully, which I think I still have a little bit, but outside of crypto. So, I need to be a real adult and set myself up for success for the future.
Right.
And as much as I hate seeing that money go away, I think it'd be really good to start intentionally planning to I don't know, maybe buy a house one day and have a retirement fund and whatever else comes with that. Because right now I feel I'm a college kid. I rent a place. I don't have any kids. I don't go to a 9-to-5 job.
You're living the dream.
Yeah, I'm retired, but without any structure. I don't know. I feel I've created this own little world, and I need to actually like work with society at the same time in a certain way.
Yeah. Tell me about your coaching business and goals there. I know, and we've talked plenty about running. I also had some of your running goals down.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the coaching side of things, goals there and kind of like what's on the horizon on the coaching side.
Yeah. So I coach a handful of athletes. It fluctuates depending on the time of the year. I started in 2017 or 18, and I've had some athletes that have been with me since like day one. And then I have some that like come and go with the seasons, but yeah, it's fun. I feel like it grounds me also, again, like you were saying, like, do you experience like the same suffering, or like, do you know what it's like to be in the back of the pack? And, I just think they're so inspirational. Like I coach a woman and she lives in Newcastle, and like, she comes down like every 6 months and has been running with me for a weekend. And it's just so fun to like expand your world outside of just like hyper focused elite other runners, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like not downgrading her at all. Like, I really, really enjoy the time that we spend together on the trail, and like I like almost like look forward to it more so than if I were like out there doing a speed workout or something.
Right.
And so it's just cool to see like races through their eyes and like hear about their goals and then like their successes. And like, so if I'm having like a shit day or week or whatever, and like they're crushing their workout, it like makes it so that like I don't care about my run anymore. Like, that's awesome that you just like set your 5 mile PR, or like you just finished your first 100 miler, and I've been working with you since you like started your 5K, and like you were just trying to finish 5K. So I really, I mean, I work with all kinds of athletes, but I love working with women, especially women that are like new to the sport and learning, and because they're just like so hungry for information and they want to do it right. No offense to men, but like women.
No, that's a proven thing in every field.
Yeah,
women listen.
Yeah, well,
that's the fundamentally like
they take advice.
Yeah. No, I've got friends that are fly fishing guides, and they say the wives outfish the husbands 10 times out of 10 because the women listen.
Yeah,
because the women do what the guides said to do, and then they catch more fish.
Totally. Yeah,
and that carries way beyond fishing or running.
And yeah, it makes me appreciate my running too, because like a lot of them have like family and kids and like these high demanding jobs, and like, or like I have 3 athletes that were like in the LA wildfires, and like luckily they're all safe, but like to hear like just different stories from across the country and like what they're dealing with on that given day, and like again, like I have no distractions. Like I can wake up and I can train, and then to like hear them like get off work and they're like, or like to see them like they're clocking their treadmill runs at like 5 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. It's like, damn, I'm still waiting for the weather to get nice so I can run in the middle of the day. Like, how spoiled am I? So yeah, it definitely grounds me and like makes me appreciate just like the sport as a whole. And yeah, it's good.
Now I can't help but to ask, I got to talk about your 2025 running goals.
Okay.
Talk to me about that. What do you? What's on the horizon?
Yes.
For the year. What's coming up running wise?
March 21st, I'm racing Vahol, and it's in Argentina. It's an 80-mile race that I'll do, and it's as much as I'm like excited to run it. The goal of it is to qualify for UTMB 2026. Get that kind of like checked off. After that, I'm not signed up, but I'm like 99% probably going to do Andorra, I think. So that'll be end of June. Then back to UTMB. Then after UTMB, I haven't fully decided. I'll definitely do something either late fall or early 2026.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those 3 races, Vahol, Andorra, UTMB, I think are like the goal right now.
Right.
And I might throw in like some like local smaller races just as like training that I don't have to travel to. But those are like the big boys for the year. So I'm really excited. Yeah.
It's so awesome. I can't wait to see. Can't wait to watch.
I'm stoked because I was injured for like 2 years. And so I was very hesitant to do like highly competitive races. And every race I went into, I was almost dreading, like, just get through this race, just get to the 2-week period after where you can take a break. But then you're back in training. And then it's just like, get through this training block, do this race, then you can rest. And it was constantly like just trying to get past this race and do the best you can. So now I'm like, no, I'm going to do all these UTMB races and I'm going to like bump this score up, and I'm going to like, I think this is the first year where I'm like, okay, I'm not injured. I'm past the surgery period and recovering all that. And like now I can like really hopefully get back to like where I was a few years ago. And yeah.
In what way? Like it's fun again? It's more competitive again? What's the biggest difference between now versus like when you've been battling injury?
Just like the confidence in my body, like not dreading every step. Like every single step I was in pain, and just like running wasn't fun. Like I didn't want to do it. Now like I'm not like procrastinating my runs and like waiting till the end of the day to do them, or like I am truly enjoying, like it's not this like mental battle anymore. And yeah, I feel like my training is gone to another level. Like for 2 years it was just like this, I don't know, just like this fight, like a constant fight of like not enjoying it and then being mad you're not enjoying it because you know how much you love it, but it's just not fun.
Right.
And now like I'm like, it's fun again.
It's fun again.
Yeah.
Love it.
You have to go through the lows.
Yeah. Dang it.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Race
yeah.
Life.
Totally.
Anything, right?
Yeah. It like I think it was Avery who said like no athlete in the world has only a positive like line, like where they're only improving constantly. Like that's impossible. Like you're gonna have lows. You have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to it.
Yeah.
Sabrina, thank you so much. This has
thank
been
you.
Such a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I just want to thank you for giving me some time today, because I know how busy you are. I know how much you have on your plate. So thank you so much for that. But bigger than that, thanks for doing what you're doing and for representing the sport so well, and for being just so, I don't know, positive and fun, and for believing in yourself and for crushing it, and for showing up after a DNF 10 years ago and, keeping it going, because it's really cool. And also too, thank you for the coaching side of things. Like it's fun to get some perspective into your world there about the fulfillment that brings you. And, just, I don't know, for all that you're doing, I really appreciate it. So I've got a gift. These are my Inspire by Example shirts. Because you're inspiring by example, and I want you to know how much it's noticed and appreciated and all of that. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me down here. This is a sweet setup. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks.